Good day and welcome to the UNA Advocacy Call. Today's conference is being recorded. At this time, I'd like to turn the conference over to Mr. Chris Watley. Please go ahead, sir.
Welcome, everyone. I just want to thank everybody for making time for this on a Thursday night when you've got a million other things you could be doing at short notice, dropping everything and joining us for this call. And I also just want to say how proud I am of our network of chapters across the country and how you've stepped up to the plate in advocacy over the last couple of months. You know, within 24 hours of the inauguration, we knew we'd have a challenge before us. And we knew we would have to do more advocacy calls to action, more calls like this, more creative actions back in our chapters than ever before. And when I open my email box every morning or late at night, I'm finding another email from a chapter leader who's reporting out on an in-district meeting or a call they had with their congressional delegation or a report out from a town hall that they were there to present their position on the importance of U.S. leadership at the UN. So we're doing more work than we ever have before. And God bless, we need to. And the purpose of this call is, first of all, to thank you for all that work, but also to kind of take a peek behind the curtain of what's happening here in Washington, because whatever your preferred news media is, whatever is popping up on your apps on your phone, you know for sure that the president gave a reveal to the nation as to what his spending priorities are. And when his budget director stood up at the White House and said, this is an America First budget, he certainly meant it. And it certainly is a budget that puts the world last. And for those of us who see our own interests as a nation and our own values as Americans as intermeshed with that world, we certainly are placed last in it too. But instead of myself rhapsodizing on this, what I want to do is turn it over to Peter Yo, who's the president of the Better World Campaign, vice president for public policy and advocacy for the UN Foundation, and the person who works with us day in and day out to take the kind of animation and passion that we have going on in our chapters and translate it into real action on Capitol Hill and going toe-to-toe on Capitol Hill with our champions, but also our detractors, and the person who has the best sense of what this budget means and what comes next and what we can do to make a difference, whether you're the UNA advocate who's answered every single call to action we've had since the beginning of the year and is wondering what to put in that email line when you've already asked for full funding multiple times, or whether you're someone wondering whether your chapter can play a bigger role and are still, just putting your toe in the water. But with that, Peter, we'd love to hear from you. What does all this mean? What can we do together? Over to you.
Great. Thank you, Chris, and thank you all for joining us this evening for this call. I just first of all want to echo Chris's important point, which is that we're midstream in terms of the advocacy actions that have been taken by all the chapters around the country. We were talking to the congressional office today, and they were saying, oh gosh, we're hearing from the UNA members about these cuts. So this tonight's update is part of basically a series of updates we've been doing to try to make sure that you're up to speed about what's happening here in Washington on the budget situation, so these ongoing advocacy actions that you're all taking can continue to be as effective as they are being. Second of all, it's important to remember that this is chapter 2 in a very long book. This, the president's budget proposal is just that. It's a proposal. Congress, feeling empowered, frequently will shred these budget proposals and start anew. So we anticipate that this whole budget process will actually determine how much money the UN and development and global health and America's role in the world, that process is really not going to culminate until next Thanksgiving or this Thanksgiving or Christmas. It's going to take that long for Congress to move through the budget process and through the appropriations process. So this is chapter 2 in a very long book. It is a very bad chapter and very scary. But we're hoping that by the end of the book, we end in a better place. And in fact, already the reaction on Capitol Hill by Republicans and Democrats to this budget proposal has been uniformly negative, particularly as it relates to foreign affairs spending, in part because, to my third point, which is actually describing what's in this budget proposal for foreign affairs spending more generally, it is such a disproportionate cut to foreign affairs compared to all the rest of the federal budget that it's caused Republicans and Democrats on the Hill to say, wait a minute, this is not the time to be retreating from the world. It's not the time to be cutting foreign aid, cutting the UN, cutting our diplomatic platforms in a way that is just so undermining to our national security, our foreign policy interests, and global interests. So people from Senator Graham to the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Matt Thornberry, to the majority leader, Mitch McConnell, have all indicated their strong opposition to this proposal. So we're going to have to see how it plays out over time. But the key thing is that at least the initial reaction on the Hill is negative. So the bill, or the budget basically would cut foreign affairs spending of the U.S. government by 31%. So that means State Department, foreign aid, USAID, United Nations, foreign military sales. So total across the board cut of 31%. And then even within that context, there are some things that will not be touched according to this budget proposal, including aid to Israel, foreign military sales, and security. So once you take those things that will not be touched according to the budget proposal, you end up with cuts to the rest of the foreign affairs accounts that are higher than 31%. So what does this mean specifically for the United Nations? Well, there's one specific cut that the president included in his budget, which is, it says that instead of paying 28% for peacekeeping, we will only pay 25%. Now, we are required by treaty to pay 28%, but basically the president is saying we're only going to pay 25%. That will, of course, put us back into arrears at the United Nations. We've fully paid our dues for almost a decade, but that provision alone would put us back into arrears and would undermine America's ability to achieve what we want to achieve in the context of the United Nations. And it would make the UN a less effective institution because peacekeepers would not be paid. And once peacekeepers are not being paid, the willingness of those countries to give troops to peacekeeping missions goes away. So that's the one concrete cut that we know, 28 to 25%. But it's far more dangerous than that. Because the budget also says that he will seek cuts to the UN regular budget and other types of UN programs and agencies. And that he will seek to either cut or eliminate American support for UN programs and agencies. Now, if you assume that we're talking about cuts to the overall foreign affairs account above 31%, and you take this language that says he wants to cut or eliminate U.S. funding to UN agencies, we see likely cuts to programs like UNICEF and the World Food Program and UN Population Fund and UNICEF and UN Refugee Agency in the 30 to 40% range. We also see additional peacekeeping cuts way beyond the 28 to 25%. We likely see cuts that would lead to significant missions being eliminated or reduced, including in Central African Republic to South Sudan. So the cuts to the UN in this budget are just devastating and require all of our action, require us to speak out, to make sure that our members of Congress know that these types of cuts are unacceptable. Now, this is only a preliminary, quote-unquote, skinny budget. We will know probably in the late May or early June timeframe what the president intends as it relates to line in, line out, as it relates to what he wants to do in terms of individual budgets for peacekeeping and UNICEF. So we just don't know how much each agency is going to get, or frankly, back to the foreign aid fund, how much different pots of foreign aid are going to get. Maternal health, child health, food programs. We just don't know. And so we won't know from the president's perspective until the late May, early June timeframe. But meanwhile, Congress is going to move ahead, and that's why really the focus of our advocacy needs to be focused on the Hill, needs to be focused on convincing our members to beat back these massive and debilitating cuts to the 150 account and support full funding for the UN. I would note that the budget also indicates that the U.S. will not contribute to the Green Climate Fund or any UN climate programs. And so obviously that's an enormous challenge. So maybe, Chris, I can leave it there and answer anybody's questions about what's in the skinny budget for the UN or for foreign affairs more generally. So, Chris, back to you.
Excellent. Operator, can you give us the guidance on how to open our line?
Yes, Mr. Watley. If you would like to ask a question at this time, you may do so by pressing the star key, followed by the digit 1 on your telephone keypad. If using a speakerphone, please make sure the mute function is turned off so the signal can reach our equipment. Again, star 1 if you would like to ask a question at this time, and we will pause for just a moment to allow everyone the opportunity to signal.
And while we're waiting for those questions to queue up, just a question for you, Peter, based on your many years on the Hill. If you're one of those great chapters, whether it's Dallas or Denver or our chapters out on the West Coast, that have really been active, that have gone out there and found every way to indicate to their congressional delegation in our updates so far that they support full funding for the UN, how should they nuance that now? How should they add to that?
My suggestion on this is the first time that we have the President of the United States proposing cuts that would fundamentally debilitate our relationship would fundamentally undermine the United Nations. I want my member to issue a statement indicating his or her opposition to these cuts. It can be a written statement, it can be a tweet, it can be a statement on the floor. I need you to speak out. It's not good enough for you to just say, oh yeah, I'm opposed to these cuts. Speak out. You have to do it now. And, Kamala Harris in California, have you said anything about the UN? It's good that you're going to vote the right way. Voting the right way is good right now. Ask her to speak out. Ask all your members of Congress to issue a statement, tweet UN-specific opposition to these cuts. We need support. We need 100% support on the Democratic side, and we need to find Republicans who are willing to oppose these cuts, and there are some. And so that's the request. I need you to
ask for a statement. Ask for a floor remarks.
Ask for a tweet. Ask for a Facebook post. Ask for something.
Excellent. Operator, do we have questions in the queue?
Yes, we do, sir, and we will go first to Jane Roberts out of Pasadena. Please go ahead.
Hi. I just kind of wanted your thought. I would think that it would be 100% sure that the UNFPA, the UN Population Fund, would be defunded. I mean, I see absolutely no chance that he would come up with some money for UNFPA. Am I not right? And 34 Million Friends is all set to absolutely relaunch and try to raise millions of dollars.
Well, thank you, Jane, and we appreciate everything you've done over the years, and 34 Million Friends. It's fantastic. I think that I generally agree with your assessment. Our assessment is that the President is highly unlikely to request funding for the UN Population Fund, and frankly, Congress is unlikely to appropriate money. Never say never. Strange things have happened in this town. So until I see it in black and white, I don't want to say for sure it's going to happen. But we have to assume that based on past practice, that this president, particularly in light of his budget, will propose defunding of UN population funds, and that Congress will, in that particular instance, for a variety of ill-informed and ideological reasons, agree to that request by the president. So, yes, the more that 34 million friends can do to raise awareness, take action, and to raise money, it needs to get done. And I know that the Dutch have launched a similar initiative.
Right. She decides.
Yeah, she decides. So, which is wonderful and it's fantastic. And we at the UN Foundation have been supportive of that initiative. So, yes.
Thanks a lot.
Sure. And you should
Great
know,
question.
James, sorry, and I apologize, Jim. And you should know that we at the UN Foundation and the Better World Campaign are up on the Hill all the time advocating for full funding for UNFPA. So it is 100% part of our advocacy agenda to talk about UNFPA.
We'll go
Operator,
next.
is there another one on the line?
Yes, we'll go next to Mohammed Kader out of the D.C. area. Please go ahead.
Hi. So I had a related question regarding how the budget cuts will affect the various agencies regarding that address global issues. I believe there's either 6 to 8 agencies that address various issues regarding peace efforts, to trade and international development through areas like sub-Saharan Africa, and also handle international health issues like malaria and HIV/AIDS prevention. So what is really the plan regarding the efforts by the current administration to create eliminating that federal funding entirely for those agencies, and if that was to go into effect, what would be the response that we would take from that?
Great, thank you. I think that it's a little bit hard to say right now which agencies this president wants to defund from an American perspective. So when we think about some of the specialized and technical agencies that facilitate, telecommunications and postal, to the global health agencies, including the World Health Organization and UNICEF, and or to the humanitarian front, the Food and Agricultural Organization and the World Food Program. It's just unclear, based on this document, what programs are specifically proposing to defund or significantly reduce. And we won't know until late May or June. So what we're going to do about it is when we see that list, we will be up on the Hill asking members of Congress to fully fund these agencies, but most importantly, we're going to fine-tune our talking points at that point to say, listen, the president's proposed eliminating all funding for Food and Agricultural Organization. Here is specifically what they're doing in order to ensure that people around the world are being fed. The president has proposed cutting half the funds for the UN Refugee Agency. Here's what the UN Refugee Agency is doing to support Syrian refugees in Lebanon, Turkey, and Jordan. So, and here are the consequences, most importantly, of eliminating this funding. So, I think that we have to stay nimble as we're in this limbo of not knowing what agencies he specifically wants to get rid of, and then just be working the Hill to make sure that they appreciate the value, not just of the UN in general, but of the UN programs and agencies that have a specific impact on things like malaria or vaccines or global health or business. So, and that we commit that we will, as we get new information, we're going to be sharing it so that we can collectively make decisions about the most effective advocacy techniques.
Great. Next question, please.
We will go to Iram Asghar out of Dallas. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. I have a very big question in my mind. I've been meeting up with the case manager director in Dallas, Texas, by virtue of United Nations of Dallas chapter, and I will be presenting them, of course, the case of our refugees and asking them questions and leaving some paperwork with them that UN has been working for. My question pertaining is, of course, these orders that Mr. President keeps on giving in and that it gets shut down by the court. It's creating the spirit of uneasiness in our community, especially the women folk, the children. I'm seeing them being very scared of just living in the town. So what can I do at the United Nations on Monday the 20th when I talk to them about the situation of the refugees and especially the people in our community that are feeling very insecure right now?
Great, thank you for your question. I think that the when it comes to the issue of refugees, I think part of what concerns people is the fact that they still have family overseas that have yet to make it in. So I think that this Secretary General has spoken up forcefully, Antonio Guterres, about the importance of countries assuming their rightful responsibility to accept refugees and to accept migrants into their country. So we can send you the statements by the Secretary General that are very much on point on this front. I think the other thing is this is an opportunity to work with new citizens of our country and new people that are living here to say, listen, this is how our system works. You need to let our policymakers know that you want them to continue to accept refugees, and you want to make sure that refugees, once they arrive, receive the funding they need to settle successfully here in America, because those funds are threatened by this budget as well. So this is a perfect moment to educate people about how our system works. And our system works by speaking out and fighting for refugees.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Lovely answer. I will do that.
Excellent. Next question, please.
We will go to Mel Boynton out of Sonoma Valley. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Peter and Chris. This is excellent. I'm hopeful that we will have a sample letter, as we did a month or so ago, about UN funding with more specifics. And I'm thinking particularly, as Jane was mentioning, UNFPA and the environmental programs of the UN, refugees, peacekeeping, and the World Food Program and others. Those are the more specifics we have. I think when we have our in-districts, I know we're having a meeting with Kamala Harris's people in Los Angeles shortly, and so we will ask her to speak out, and I have a suspicion she will, but we would love to have a letter, and I'll remind everyone on the line that your advocacy committee will be meeting on a phone conference on March 23rd. So we hope all chapters will participate in that advocacy call, which will be a strong follow-up to what we're talking about today.
Well, thank you, Mel, for your question and comment, which is, I guess, we will, of course, update and have an effective letter that people could send to the policymakers. And we also have a Chris, I don't know if this document's been circulated yet, but after this call, but we have a 4-page summary of the cuts proposed to the President's budget and why these cuts are so detrimental to global and American interests. So we'll circulate that document and make sure that because that's the perfect document, not only to use for your own op-eds, your own talking points, but it's also a perfect document to hand to Kamala Harris's staff and say, listen, this is what the impact is. So we will circulate this document, which we just completed last night and then fine-tuned this morning to reflect the actual budget.
Super.
Excellent. Good point. And thank you to all of you who have already responded with your letters to our advocacy call to action over the last 24 hours. And we'll have an opportunity for one with much more granularity when we get the full budget. Next question, please.
We'll go next to Her Royal Highness Princess Elizabeth. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Chris and Peter. I just wanted to reiterate, as many others have, given the state of South Carolina, I know the UN ambassador personally, and it is her mission, and I can tell both of you this with certainty, she wants the U.S. out of the UN. So you have to tread lightly with her. The senators and congressmen that are Republican, South Carolina is really going to have to pressure them. They will say one thing to your face and vote the opposite. So the citizens of South Carolina are going to have to go at them and let them know that their seats are at stake if they pass this budget.
Well, thank you, and I couldn't agree more that we have to be super persistent in our communications with our lawmakers to make sure that they cannot get away with just saying, "Oh yeah, I'm with you," and then that's why I think it's important that we ask for statements now.
Agree, and hold their feet to the fire, because otherwise they will not.
Right.
Like I said, I know these people personally, and Nikki Haley wants the U.S. out of the UN.
Yeah, and she was on this. As an organization, we have to continue to work with Ambassador Haley. Because, we will continue to work with her, and hope that she continues to find a way to fight these types of cuts. But I hear what you're saying, and we're going in with our eyes wide open. So thank you very much.
No, thank you for that point. And we certainly, for all of you who are with us at Members Day, we have to remind ourselves we're in a movement that stands for something. We're not defined by what we stand against, and we need to engage and advance our issues. But good point. Next question.
We'll go to Kim Smith out of Portland. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name's Kim Smith. You just said that. I'm with UNA Portland, as well as Regional Center of Expertise on Education for Sustainable Development. RCE Greater Portland was acknowledged by United Nations University and works with UNESCO. And so I'm curious about the impact this is going to have on the State Department cuts and our UNESCO liaison, as well as if you have any news on the current state of the U.S. Commission to UNESCO.
Thank you. And as you know, we have been chief advocates for continued American leadership in UNESCO. And I had the opportunity the other day to have lunch with Irina Volkova, who's head of UNESCO, and we reiterated our joint United Nations Association Better World campaign commitment to support funding for UNESCO, leadership at UNESCO. I think that the proposed budget, as it relates to educational and cultural exchanges, is probably even more devastating than it is for the UN. That there is no intention. I read one statement that there was an intention to get rid of the entire Educational and Cultural Bureau of the State Department, but I don't know if that's accurate. But I do think that under this budget, there will be zero funding for UNESCO, and my guess is the cuts to educational and cultural exchanges funded by the State Department will be severe and disproportionate in this budget. Now, the good news is that there are many champions on the Hill who believe very strongly in educational and cultural exchanges. So it doesn't mean that it will be continued full funding, What it means, though, is that this budget is not the last word as it relates to these types of issues, that in fact Congress will have the opportunity to weigh in as well. So, but this budget is very bad news for UNESCO and for anything in the educational and cultural realm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you for that. Next question, please.
We will go to Robert Larrick out of Westchester. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the many good things a better world does. It brings up an important issue. I think you brought up that I live on the East Coast in Westchester, and the West Coast also has a lot of Democrats who support the UN. But we need a whole new strategy which appeals to Republicans. And don't give up on Nikki Haley. She did issues of supremacy and what we make most important. She got rid of the Confederate flag. That was with some of her...
Excellent point, Bob.
No.
Excellent point, Bob. And in fact, I would love to pause on that because that's a question that we haven't had before. Is
the schools are school? Yes, go ahead.
Over to you, Peter, because one of the things that I think we need to do is find ways to have conversations beyond our comfort zone, find ways to engage Republicans, to grow as UNA, USA into states that haven't necessarily been our strength. And we'd love to get your perspective on that, Peter.
Yeah, well, a couple things, which is, first of all, I'm so happy that under Chris and Rachel's leadership, and most importantly, the leadership of all the chapters around the country, we see a growing number of campus chapters who, in some states that are more on the purple to red side, so as well as other community chapters. And so there's an exciting opportunity with chapter growth to reach out to some red and purple states where we can have an impact on policymakers. And as part of our rejiggering of our plans as a result of the election, we're specifically trying to work on developing chapters in some key states that would be more on the red and purple side of the house. So we hear you loud and clear, but we have repeatedly we're just so happy that with the advocacy actions being taken by our chapters, in across the Midwest and in the South and in places that are not on the right and left bank of America, where there's some real meaningful action happening. So, completely agree with your point. We need to focus on developing supporters around the country, and both for BWC and UNA, we're taking steps as we speak to fill that gap. So we're on it, but thank you for raising it. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Next question, please.
We will go to Jennifer Nielsen out of Montana. Please go ahead.
Hey, guys. I'm flying home to Montana to help set up that chapter and to talk to Rob Quist, who's running for Congress. And Rob Quist was a family friend when I was a kid, the singing cowboy, right? So have you guys reached out to them yet about their views on the United Nations? Because Montana doesn't play by any kind of normal rules on Republican and Democrat. There's a lot of independence in there.
Well, first of all, thank you for working to get ourselves established in Montana in terms of the chapter. Greatly appreciated, and it's completely apropos of the previous question, so thank you. We had not reached out to him. Glad to hear he's a singing cowboy. That sounds interesting. Congress truly reflects the American public, so I think it's an exciting opportunity. We have reached out to him. Please let us know what you hear, but it's an exciting opportunity, and in light of Senator Gaines's membership on the State Foreign Office Subcommittee, that he is one of the key senators that will be determining foreign affairs spending and spending on the U.S. So the more that you can do on that front, the better. Thank you for doing this.
Will do.
Excellent. Great job, Jenny. Next question.
We'll go to Herb Berenstock out of the East Bay. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much. This is another excellent call, and I'm sure there are hundreds of people on it. I wanted to dovetail in the last comment. We had begun the initiative to try to target states and congressional districts where there were key members in the Congress, or you had in headquarters. And I wondered if you could maybe send the word out to the chapters. Do they know of somebody in some of those districts? Maybe a student in college who is a resident there, or a relative or a friend or something like that, so we can help you target to have 100% coverage of the key people in the key committees. That would be one suggestion. Number two, on the call about 6 weeks ago, you gave us a kind of a timeline of things that we on the call could expect. Now, Peter, you've mentioned a number of things already. This is going to come up in April, and we've got to continue with this. I wondered if, before we get off the call, you could kind of summarize, what you wanted from us, including, of course, following up on any petitioning and advocacy alerts or visits right now and the June Day on the Hill. But what else might everybody expect to be hearing from you, either on a regular, predictable basis, or more likely on an ad hoc? And then let me dovetail on a couple things Mel said about things that would help us. One of the things that I've seen in the last 10 days at 2 meetings I've spoken with is people eat up that kind of postcard that says these are things that the United Nations provides, and it lists the feeding and the humanitarian support and the vaccinations. Could that be reprinted and sent to us, to all the chapters, so we have this as a leave behind? We also were told that there might be a template, and as things evolve now, if you could send the press release template, I think a lot of chapters now are gearing up, and we'd love to reach out to a wider audience. Next, could you send out the petitions with the UNA brand, not only the BWC brand, because more of our people, our members, our listservs, they identify with UNA. And finally, going back to the success of the Members' Day, could you continue to send the tweets that we can repeat that would target on these urgent issues, whether it's defunding of a particular agency or something else? You guys are doing a great job, and we're all eager to follow up. We have meetings with, echoing Milligan, we're meeting with Kamala Harris's people and Dianne Feinstein's people in Northern California in the next 10 days.
Herb, this is Chris. We have indeed everything that has gone out under the BWC brand has gone out under the UNA brand as well. But I know that you're one who gets both feeds, so you may be responding to the BWC action alerts first. But let me go over to Peter on the calendar and what are some of those kind of peak moments between now and June.
Yeah, and Herb, and on several of your points, we'll definitely take note of them and get you the materials. And I just the postcards somebody just mentioned, maybe Chris with the UN done a new version. So absolutely. I think the key moments to watch for are the next one is April 28th. April 28th is when the existing continuing resolution expires. That's when we're going to find out whether Senator Lindsey Graham, who is upset about the passage of the Israeli settlement resolution in the Security Council last December, decides to punish the United Nations for passage of that. So we are working intently to ensure that Senator Graham appreciates the importance of continued funding to the UN, and Secretary General himself has met with Senator Graham on a couple of occasions. So that's the next real moment where we're going to need a surge to make sure that right before the continuing resolution expires, the last week in April, that we are communicating with the key members to say, listen, we are expiring. Please continue funding for the United Nations. So that's milestone number one. Milestone number two is going to be in mid to late May. Mid to late May is when the appropriations process will really begin in earnest, and that's when we're going to really need a lot of messaging going, and then to key appropriators to make sure that they understand the importance of UN funding. And then the third moment is really around Chris, when is the meeting again? In June?
Our leadership summit is June 11th through the 13th, and it's June 13th where we'll be on the Hill.
Yeah, so those are the three major dates that I see coming up that we are hooking our advocacy calendar around. So thank you. And we'll try to, recognizing that there may be other stuff that will intervene that will require a phone call or information. We're not living in normal times. We're living in a time when most of the rules are now gone. So as stuff happens, that is relevant to the UN, we'll be back on the phone, we'll be sending emails, we'll be letting you know what's going on.
Excellent. Next question, please.
We'll go next to Ginger Stillman out of Southern New York State. Please go ahead.
Hi. I'm not sure what I heard about Nikki Haley, but I wonder whether you folks have seen her interviewed on the Today Show this morning.
Yes, we did. I watched her on the Today Show, and she indicated that she looked forward to working directly with the Secretary General to promote reform and change within the organization, but she reiterated that that the UN has potential and that it needs to live up to it. Frankly, we have invested a lot in making sure that Nikki Haley has the information that she needs to be the strongest and effective ambassador to the United Nations. My sense is that she's talking frequently to the President and to the Secretary of State. She is also a very close ally of Senator Lindsey Graham, and Lindsey Graham is the one that will be critically important to determining funding levels. So we continue to believe that we need to be investing in educating and working with Nikki Haley, recognizing that she's now operating with a president's budget that is devastating in terms of the U.S.-UN relationship. But this is a long-term plan. It's a long-term game. We have to be in it for the next 3.5 years and beyond. So we have to continue to engage with whoever is in charge, including at all levels, to try to get the best possible outcome. Tune in tomorrow. There's a part 2 of the interview in which she's going to talk more about, I think, Russia.
They also said they'd be talking about her personal, moving her family and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and in fact, I forgot to mention that we have these infographics that we put online that talk about the value of the UN and how it's effective and it serves American interests. And Ambassador Haley liked a couple of our infographics, and then her 15-year-old son also liked some of our infographics as well. And these are co-branded BWC UNA infographics. So, I think she's looking to understand how the complexities of the UN, how it serves American interests. The other thing she's indicated is she wants to be out talking to Americans around the country about the UN. And so we have, extended an offer to her to try to say, listen, we're happy to facilitate speaking engagements around the country, with our UNA chapters. So, thank you, teacher.
Thank you. Next question, please.
We'll go to Mary Steiner out of San Francisco. Please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Yes, and really great information here. We would love to see that 4-page document. Are there statistics about the amount that 45% of the amount of money that we're talking about in terms of cuts?
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, the document does have our estimates about the percentage points that for cuts, and it doesn't have it as much in terms of dollar amounts because, frankly, hard to until we know what agencies he specifically is targeting in terms of dollar amounts, but the fact sheet that you're going to get has all the details that we know, including specific percentages.
So it would tell how much, though, that would be cut from the American. In dollars, it would say how much would be cut from the American contribution.
Correct.
And also the use of social media. The last speaker talked about websites and catching attention of our genuines and so forth. How to better work with them in terms of social media. We're finding that there are some new apps out available, and we'd be happy to share them with other chapters, especially with regard to advocacy.
Well, that's a great offer, Mary, and we appreciate it. And we try to stay on top of the latest trends, but it's, as you know, in the Bay Area, it's you think you got it down, and then things change. But fortunately, the average age of our digital team at the UN Foundation is about 23. So we have young people whose job it is to digitally communicate. And if you look at Twitter and Instagram and Facebook today, a lot of the UN-related messaging, which is related to funding, it's our material. So we are 100% committed to making sure that we stay on top of the latest digital trends. But there's so much to learn. So anything that you've learned from your genuine members and you want to share with other chapters than us, we look forward to it, because we agree that you have to reach young people where they are as opposed to where you want them to be. And where they are is on Snapchat or on Instagram. And I have a 4-year-old boy, an 18-year-old boy. They communicate with each other on Snapchat. I'm like, it's not texting even, it's Snapchat. And so we have to be on Snapchat if you want to reach them. And we have to be on Instagram because that's the new Facebook. So anyway, we're 100% committed, and fortunately we have people much younger than me doing this.
Great point. Next question, please.
We'll go to Jim Carpenter out of Milwaukee. Please go ahead.
Hi, Chris and Peter. I know you don't have dollar figures yet, but you said there's a 31% cut, I think, to foreign affairs. So if we know what the foreign affairs budget is, what would a 31% cut be equal to, and how does it compare to the $54 billion increase proposed for military spending? That's one question I had. The second question is, do you know that there's a letter signed by generals and admirals talking about the need to not cut foreign affairs budgets? I think the number of generals and admirals was 121. Were you aware of that letter from the people in the military asking not to cut the foreign affairs budget?
I think Peter's very much involved in that effort. I'd love to hear you speak to that.
Yeah, sure. That letter was organized by the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition, of which I'm on the board of that organization, and and in fact, that letter has had a transformative impact on the debate on Capitol Hill, with member after member citing that letter. So that letter was a wonderful brainchild of Liz Schreier, who's the head of USGLC. Then I believe today they released the letter of 105 faith organizations, mostly faith organizations on the center right of the spectrum. So they're completely on top of these types of coalition building, and it's exciting. In terms of the dollar amount, the new State Department budget under the President's budget would be a total of $37.6 billion, and that comes down from a level of $54 billion for the U.S. last time around. So that's 54 minus 38.
So $16 billion cut, and And that's the full Function 150 budget, so not just the UN, but all of USAID, everything else.
That's the whole Megillah. So that's the right now.
The point is then that $16 billion cut, which is so devastating to these programs, is much less than the proposed $54 billion military increase.
Indeed, you are 100% correct.
All right, thank you.
Exactly. And in fact, in listening to Mick Mulvaney, the head of the Office of Management Budget, talk about the president's budget today, he was emphasizing that this is a hard power budget, moving away from the soft power budget of the previous administration. And I think it's a misnomer to choose one over the other.
It's so frustrating because the concept that anybody is for soft power is supposed to be smart power. It's just a return to rhetoric from like the pre-Cold War. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's really unfortunate that they have decided to head in this direction. When you look at funding for foreign affairs spending, including the UN, it is on the spectrum of initiatives that are vital to U.S. foreign policy and national security interests. And so the concept that it is somehow fundamentally, horrible compared to defense spending is just a turn to stomach, frankly. And thank you for your leadership as well in reaching out to Senator Johnson and his staff, and in particular your suggestion that former Congressman Tom Petri would be helpful. It's a good one. So I would, while I don't personally have any connections to Petri, I think that's a good way to approach it. So keep out Johnson. I think he's worth the effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Next question, please.
We'll go to Bill Haas out of Southwestern Connecticut. Please go ahead.
Yes, hello, Peter and Chris. Thank you very much for your presentation. And I'm just calling to follow up. We're fortunate. We have an excellent Congressman, Jim Himes, and also Senator Blumenthal, Senator Murphy are big supporters of the UN. And I think your point about getting them to be champions in making statements on the floor is a great one. I'm wondering, what can people do who are from these blue states that can help with these other congressmen and senators that aren't so supportive? Do you have any suggestions on that? And again, I want to thank you for sending the talking points, the updated budget information, the things that Herb referred to earlier.
Yeah,
thank you.
I promise we'll get it to you, and thank you for the question. I'm going to challenge you a little bit on this. I have seen not a lot from, in terms of public statements from Himes and Blumenthal, in terms of a record statement, a floor statement, a Twitter comment about the UN and its importance to Connecticut and its importance. Now, maybe I've missed it, in which case I'm embarrassed to have missed it. But now, listen, Chris Murphy, what a rock star. He has been such a champion for the UN. And he's on all the right committees. He is speaking out. He's leading. We're just so happy that he's there. But I think going back to Blumenthal and to Himes and saying thank you for those nice constituent letters you sent and all this type of stuff. Could you speak out on the Senate floor and the House floor about the UN funding? And I think that would be fantastic if they did that. We need those types of support. It's so hard for people in one state to influence policymakers in another state.
Right.
We worked on the Hill for 20 years. The first question that I asked when I was a staff assistant and 21 years old, the first question I asked when somebody would call is, "Are you from Eastern Connecticut?" And if you weren't from Eastern Connecticut, I'd say, well, I suggest you call your congressman. It's the way it is. But I think you could turn Blumenthal into Himes and Himes into real vocal champions, and we appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your comments on that because I thought it's a great suggestion. I agree with you. I've not seen anything too much publicly from Blumenthal and Himes, but I'm in touch with Jim Himes pretty closely, and I will ask him for sure. And also, Senator Blumenthal certainly will focus on those two. And Jim and Chris Murphy, we've had for an event up in December for Human Rights Day, so we know about him.
He's a rock. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Okay,
thanks.
Bill.
Next question, please.
We'll go to Barbara Goggin-Muller out of Santa Barbara. Please go ahead.
Thank you. First, I want to compliment you. We need these facts. We need them right now. And I want to compliment all the UNAs who have gone forth and spoken to all the people who we need to. But then I want to remind us the power of the people. I have not seen anything like this in years, where the people are feeling it's their responsibility to make their voices heard. So going along with that, I love the talking points, Chris, that you referred to. I use them all the time. But is there another way that we can really activate the power of these people who really care about the United Nations?
You know, Barbara, you raise a great point, and I'll speak really briefly to another thing that we're doing, in that we know that our job, we're the only advocates for the U.S.-UN relationship. When it comes to fighting for UN funding and the life-saving work that it does, we sing solo. But sometimes there are other issues, other ways that we can reach out to other groups and sing in the choir and be a little more effective. So one of the things that we're doing, in addition to the calendar points that Peter mentioned that are about the budget process on the Hill, we're also working with a consultant firm that is giving us some new messaging to equip our chapters to reach out to those organizations who may not be exactly aligned with us, but they care about climate change, and we need to reach out to them for Earth Day in April. Or they may not be, focused day in and day out about the U.S.-UN relationship, but they care about LGBTI rights as universal rights, and we need to reach out to them during Pride Week. So we're going to have a whole set of additional messaging materials and also digital activation and social media tools that are going to be designed to help chapters reach out laterally and find other champions and other partners and allies in those kind of calendar moments that are issue specific, where we can take Earth Day and talk about those devastating cuts to climate specific programs in UN funding. So it's an excellent point.
Thank you. I think that the fact that the United Nations is their 71st anniversary, that they are there for us. It's our global voice. It's where we see the people speaking together. And our elected officials at the city council level, at the superintendent's level, they also need to be activated. So I'm so grateful for everything you send us, because it allows me to just tweet it out and send it out.
Thank you for your leadership, Barbara.
I think we have time for one. If you follow me on Twitter, I'll follow you.
Excellent. I think, operator, we have time for one last question for you.
We will go to Abdurasul Bultayeb out of Boston. Please go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for taking my question. President Trump is increasing defense budget and cutting funds not only from UN but even the State Department, as we talked about earlier. Doesn't he realize that UN also has a military force abroad that represents contributing countries like America? We have only like 80 peacekeepers versus a country like Bangladesh that has 6,000, and investing $1 in conflict prevention and peacekeeping today may save us thousands of dollars tomorrow. So my question is there any voice in the inner circle of president who has his ears, besides the Congress or Ambassador Haley, or even us, the people, to help him understand how beneficial is the UN? And thank you.
You know your UN peacekeeping, my friend, and we're lucky to have you as an advocate. Peter,
Thank you. Thanks.
Peter, I would love it if you would talk about kind of some of our creative ways as the UN Foundation to reach other audiences, those who might have the ear of the president in this administration.
Yeah. Well, let me first address the specific issue you raised about the peacekeepers. One of the things that we're trying to do is highlight the number of peacekeepers who have lost their lives in service to the United Nations. In Mali alone, over 100 UN peacekeepers have been killed. fighting extreme development in the northern part of the country. So we believe that the highlighting the ultimate sacrifice paid by UN peacekeepers has potential to at least remind policymakers, including President Trump, that it's not only civilians, but it's actually military who are serving from Nepal or India or Bangladesh or rarely from the U.S. That are on the front lines of these really complex challenges being tackled by peacekeepers. So I couldn't agree more. It's something that we're trying to do more of. It's highlighting individual peacekeepers, their stories, and their sacrifices. So thank you. One of the things that we do is we're trying to increasingly take members of Congress and staff to see peacekeeping missions firsthand, because once you see a peacekeeping mission, you're a convert. And I'll give you an example. We just took Adam Kinzinger to see the peacekeeping mission in Liberia, and as a result of his visit, he is now strongly opposed to the president's foreign affairs budget and issued a statement today saying it was a horrible budget proposal. So these types of investments we're making is making members of Congress and staff over the long term have the potential to, I think, create new people that see the power of peacekeepers. We also do an event on the Hill with diplomats that we highlight this. So couldn't agree more. And it's a growth area for us in terms of messaging. Chris, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's excellent. I saw Adam Kinzinger speaking about Liberia on C-SPAN today. So those are investments that pay for benefits for years. Well, great. I want to thank everybody who stayed on the line. We had almost 200 people on this call, and who stayed to the end, who've asked fantastic, engaging questions that show how much they understand their local politics, but also how much they understand and appreciate the work that the UN does on the front line. We're blessed to have the leaders that we have. I am constantly reminded that the reason that UNA USA exists, and the reason that the strategic alliance between the UN Foundation and UNA USA made so much sense is this moment, is seeing our network activate and pour themselves in to this challenge. So I'm just grateful to have everyone on the line. And over to you, Peter, for the last word of the night.
Great. Well, I just want to thank you, Chris, for convening us, and for your leadership of the organization. Thank you to the National Council members and to chapter leaders and advocacy heads for the continued leadership. This is all about you and your leadership, and we really appreciate it. And thank you to all of you who dialed in this evening and ask questions and listen to what we have to say. And we have a bunch of follow-ups, so most importantly, we'll be sending this document to you, or at least making it available. So thank you all, and look forward to our next phone call.
Excellent. Good night, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, this will conclude today's conference call. We thank you for your participation, and you may disconnect at this time.